This is Always Talking Ball. Tyler Noe, Lance Barton. If it's your first time in, real quick before we get started, as always, make sure you like and subscribe on whatever platform you're tuning in on, and make sure you're following us on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Lance, let's get into our big game breakdown, sponsored by Branded Bills. Click on the link in the description or this QR code on the screen that just popped up on YouTube. And when you get to the checkout, type in the promo code BRANDED15 for 15% off of your order. Lance has got a Branded Bills hat on there. They've got USA stuff. They've got dad life hats. They've got all kinds of colleges. They've got Baylor. They've got Alabama. They've got Indiana. They've got Illinois. They've got all kinds of stuff. So many hats out there for all the college football lovers, college sports lovers. I'm not sure you can get it in by week 1 if you're listening to this, but you'll get it in by week 2. And then it'll go along with one of our sponsors later, as we're talking about getting stuff in for the college football season. All right. No other place to start than in Columbus, Ohio, the home of the defending national champion, Ohio State Buckeyes. Number 3 coming to the country versus number 1, Texas. They get to welcome in the Longhorns. This is the last team that Texas played. It was Ohio State last year. The last memory they have in their minds is Jack Sawyer scooping and scoring, running down the sidelines to officially put them out of their misery. Because again, Texas was in the red zone, and we're going to touch on their red zone offense there. But this is the 3rd regular season matchup between the Buckeyes and the Longhorns. If you are old folks like me and Lance listening, you'll remember back in I think 05, 07, they had a home and home there where I think each team won a road game. Colt McCoy was playing in those games, some good games to watch back on ABC, which were actually night games. Fun to see those games being played at night. This one's at noon. Feel terrible for the Buckeyes fans. You guys don't get primetime games anymore. It's a shame. But obviously the big storyline is Arch Manning versus Julian Sayin. How will the offenses look? How will the defenses look? How will Steve Sarkisian's offense look against Matt Patricia's new look defense? We talked about the red zone woes for Texas. Will they improve with Arch? Obviously, being able to use his legs a little more. Will they improve on their percentage from last year? You got Pete Kwiatkowski going up against Brian Hartline, new coordinator there for Ohio State. There's storylines everywhere for this matchup.
Yeah, I think that you just hit the nail on the head, man. We've been talking about it all offseason, especially me, that the coordinators at Ohio State, having Brian Hartline, who's a superstar wide receivers coach, the best in the business, who's now going to be the primary play caller, Matt Patricia, who was a really good defensive coordinator in the NFL, terrible head coach for the Detroit Lions, but that has nothing to do with what he'll do as a defensive coordinator. Interested to see what that defense looks like now with no Jim Knowles there at Ohio State. And obviously the roster, a ton of those Buckeyes last year are now going to be playing on Sundays in the NFL. But again, it's Ohio State. They're one of those programs that doesn't just reload. They just reload a bigger gun. So, bringing in, different guys in the transfer portal, having some of the guys they've got coming back, homegrown guys, Bo Atkinson from North Carolina, Kenyatta Jackson at one of the other edge positions for Ohio State. Caden Curry is another edge rusher for them. I think it's going to be really solid. Ohio State's defense, I know that Ryan Day has talked about a little worry as far as the lack of depth at the defensive tackle position. Again, they've got really good frontline guys that are unproven, but were highly touted. Blue chip guys coming out of high school. Sonny Styles, one of the best linebackers in the entire country, and obviously the best player on defense in the country, and Caleb Downs at safety. They've got some DBs that are coming back.
Texas fans are going to be arguing about that one with Anthony Hill on the other side.
That's a good point. Honestly, 2 or 3 of the best defensive players, period, in the country, with Anthony Hill Jr. and Colin Simmons at Texas and Caleb Downs at Ohio State. Don't disagree, man. A guy that I'm looking forward to seeing for the Buckeyes is the corner 5-star Devin Sanchez, who they have made comparisons to the impact that he might have on the defensive side of the ball that Jeremiah Smith had on the offensive side of the ball. Sanchez was the number 1 corner in the country coming out of high school this past year. And he's just, ever since he stepped foot on campus there, they've talked about just how good he's been for the Buckeyes. So just like you said, man, storylines everywhere. Obviously, the one that's going to get all the headlines is going to be Arch Manning and Julian Sayin. Which one of those quarterbacks that are first-year starters, I know Arch started a couple of games last year, but which one of those QBs can handle this massive moment right out of the gate? Huge game. I know it's not prime time, but everybody in the world is going to be watching, following Lee Corso's final deal there at game
Mhm.
day. Two big brands like the Buckeyes and Texas. Which one of those QBs can handle the moment better? Obviously, with Texas, something that I think is interesting here is the last 2 years, Texas early in the season, back to back years, went on the road
Mhm.
into huge games against huge brands, against really good defenses and good football teams. Texas in 2023 went on the road and beat Nick Saban in Alabama and Tuscaloosa. And then in last year, they went on the road and beat Michigan in the big house. I know Michigan turned out not to be necessarily what they were previous years, but they still were a very good defensive football team. And Sark and Texas just ripped them to shreds in the big house last year. So having all summer to prepare, what is this Texas offense going to look like with Sark having a whole offseason to prepare? The only issue with that is, what are you preparing for? What do you look at?
Yeah.
Matt Patricia hasn't coached at the college football level in years. So I don't know what kind of tape you're going to be watching. I guess probably some NFL tape of Patricia's defenses in the past and whatnot. But if you're Texas, you're just going to do what you do, man. They're going to run the football. First and foremost, they're going to try to pound the rock with Trey Wisner and CJ Baxter. Baxter's back from injury. And then you're going to try to play action off that and hit some shots down the field with a lot of those speedy receivers that Texas has. Texas has a plethora of just burners at wide
Mhm.
receiver. Some of them are unproven, but again, they're former 5 stars, top receivers at their respective positions. A transfer from Stanford who was very good last year as a freshman at Stanford. A transfer tight end from Cal who was the top tight end transfers injuries. He was a top tight end transfer in the country
Yeah.
this past year. We know Texas likes to use the tight end in the passing game, so it's just going to be interesting of a cat and mouse game between these two coaching staffs. And I can't wait to see what Ohio State's going to look like offensively with Hartline calling plays.
Yeah.
Are they going to be slinging it all over the yard with Julian saying and that ridiculous wide receiver bunch? We know Texas is going to have one of the best like edge rushers, linebackers, one of the best pass rushers in the entire country. They've got multiple dudes that can get home and get sacks and get pressure on the QB. And I think it was you that said in our top defenses episode that Texas may have the best back seven in the entire country with
Mhm.
their linebackers and their DBs.
Yep.
So that matchup of the Ohio State wide receivers with those Texas DBs, what's that going to look like? But dude, I can't wait to see like what do you think Arch is going to look like, man? Week one. What is your honest expectation for him week one on the road in the big house? I mean, sorry, in the big house. in the horseshoe.
Yeah, we'll talk about obviously, with the LSU Clemson game coming up too, with like, the atmospheres and everything. Week one can be a little different. Like if these games were happening in week 12 and you're talking about going in the horseshoe or going into Memorial Stadium, like, how are they going to handle that? Like Texas will have played in SEC stadiums, LSU will have played on the road. Like, but again, week one, you're kind of hyped up. You're so jacked up to finally hit somebody else besides your own guys. But yeah, I think Arch, man, like he just carries himself with such swagger. And it's not normally a swagger you see from a guy with the last name of Manning.
I agree.
Um, but it's intriguing to see, man. Like you mentioned Patricia on the defense side of the ball, and you touched on Hartline. Like, yeah, what like is Day going to have his imprint on the Ohio State offensive game plan? Like, or is he going to fully let, at least out of the gates, first game of the year, like, let's see what happens. Is he going to let Hartline control the offense, call all the plays, not give any input, like just let him do his thing like he probably did with Chip Kelly?
Yeah, I think he'll definitely have an input on it, obviously, especially in the game plan. But as far as the game being called itself, I would imagine it's going to be Hartline.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. That is intriguing to see because we know a couple of years ago, I think Hartline might have started out as the play caller and then Day ended up taking over the reins.
Yep.
But the question marks I have for each of these teams, Texas, which is we're going to talk about this in a little bit too with LSU going to Clemson, having a new offensive line going on the road in Columbus in that hostile environment, the communication piece of that, of having a bunch of guys that's never been in the heat of battle together as a unit, going on the road in a hostile environment like that. What is that communication going to be like? How are they going to handle that defensive front for Ohio State that's going to have some solid pieces? And
You
then the
know,
other,
you know who this you know who this sounds a lot like? It sounds a lot like people were talking about Notre Dame last year going into College Station
yeah,
week 1. And
yeah,
I have faith in these coaches. Like I have faith in Marcus Freeman. I got faith in Sark that they're going to figure it out and they're going to have a game plan set for that. Like they're just going to be ready for it.
Yep. And on the flip side of that is Texas on the other side on the other side of the ball. What does Texas's interior defensive line look like? They lost again 2 years ago. They lost two of the best in the country, and Murphy and Sweat. They replaced those guys through the transfer portal and some homegrown guys, and didn't really seem like they had much of a drop off at all last year. They lost multiple guys this past year, off of last year's Texas defense to the NFL, and they replaced them with guys in the transfer portal. Marad Watson, who's a transfer from Syracuse, who everybody that you listen to that sees Texas's practices and that covers the team closely talks about that they think they really hit with that guy. Cole Brevard from Purdue. I mean, again, another Purdue transfer. Who knows what we're going to see out of him? But again, they went heavy in the transfer portal to try to replace some of those guys in the interior of that defense. So I think that the matchups are who gets the better of one. I know the line of scrimmage always is like, who controls the line of scrimmage usually wins most games. And obviously that's going to be a huge piece of this. But I think that Ohio State, especially, and Texas, they both, man, are going to want to be able to run the football to take the pressure off of their. I know that Arch isn't young, but as far as like his overall experience at this point, they are young quarterbacks as far as their experience. They're going to want to run the football to try to take the pressure off of their shoulders to where the game isn't put on Julian Sayin's shoulders and the game isn't put on Arch Manning's shoulders on the road. So who can run the football and who can stop the run?
Who do you think is a better quarterback equipped to handle all that pressure, though?
At this point, man, I think it's Arch just because like he has been in this system now for 3 years.
But dude, they have to convert in the red zone.
Yes, to that point, 2 years ago, Texas was 120th in the country in red zone. Last year, they were a little bit better. They were 54th. But I'm going to point this out. I just mentioned how Texas running the football is a huge piece. Like Sark's offenses, everybody thinks that like Sark, Kiffin, and a lot of these guys, Lincoln Riley, because they score a lot of points, that they're just slinging it all over the place. All of those offensive coaches and offensive minds I just named, their bread and butter first is running the football. And then they throw off of that. Being able to run the football opens up the passing game for all those coaches that I just mentioned.
Yep.
Texas last year in their 3 losses, they lost twice to Georgia and they lost to Ohio State in that semifinal game. They averaged 40 yards rushing per game in those 3 losses. Again, I know those are 2 extremely good defenses. Ohio State last year, number 1 defense in the country, and Kirby Smart's Georgia defense. But again, this is Ohio State. This is one of the best teams in the country. If Texas can't run the football, I think they're going to have a tough time winning this game. I do. But again, the so-called question mark, again, it's not a weakness. It's a question right now is what is Ohio State's defensive front going to look like with replacing everything that they replaced? If Texas's O-line gets some push and Texas starts running the football, I think Texas wins this game.
Yeah, let's just start off there, man. I'm gonna give you my first best bet of the year, and I made it a couple weeks ago, actually last week. Took Texas to win straight up, plus 110 money line. I just think for the 3rd year in a row, like you mentioned, they went into Alabama 2 years ago, went into Michigan last year. They're kind of getting to the same situation. Like Michigan last year was coming off that national championship, and they had lost a ton of guys, right? And they had this big game, and Texas just went in there, and they looked so much faster than Michigan. They looked more physical, everything. I don't know if Texas is necessarily going to look a lot faster than Ohio State because Ohio State recruits to like SEC speed levels, like different than Michigan did. But I just think 3 years in a row, I think Sark when's Texas going to host one of these games, right? Maybe next year. But I just think, 3rd year in a row, I think they go in to Ohio State. I think there's a little bit of a hangover from the championship from Ohio State. And I think Arch gets the better of Sayin. I think, Patricia and those coordinators, they struggle in the first game, man. It's a tough game, tough go to go ahead against, the number 1 team in the country, which AP has, we have, all that. I just think Texas goes out, makes a statement early in the season, but you're really with these big games and with the new strength of schedule metric and record strength, like that the committee is supposedly using. these types of games will hopefully be played more in the future, and it's good for us to watch. It's fun for us to watch. So I don't think it's going to be a blowout either way. Would it surprise me if like Texas went in there and won by a couple touchdowns? No, it wouldn't. But
Really?
yeah, I don't think it would. So that's why I'm taking Texas on the money line. They're underdogs right now. I think of 1.5.
Okay. Well, I'm with you. I've got Texas Bell money line plus 110. So we match up together on that. I think Texas is going to be able to run the football a little bit in this game. I think Texas's pass rush is going to be able to get home. I think it's the best in the country. With Colin Sammons, Anthony Hill Jr., Trey Moore, Ethan Burke, and they're going to have some other guys too that we're not thinking of that have been blue chip
Hmm.
recruits that they brought in. And I think that Texas's secondary is going to be able to hold their own enough
Yeah,
against that Ohio State ridiculous wide receiver core. I
they did it last year in the playoffs.
Yes, they did.
Yeah,
Again,
I mean
every
they shut
dude,
down Jeremiah Smith.
man, you know how people are, bro. All they do is look and say, "Yeah, Texas lost by double digits last year." They were on the freaking 1 yard line with
Hmm.
with at the very end of the game
Yeah,
with a chance to tie it up,
yeah,
and then they couldn't get in the end zone. We talked about the red
yeah.
zone woes, uh, and I just think that this being the first game for this new coordinators, like you talked about for Ohio State, that Texas. It's funny you mentioned that about Michigan last year, catching them coming off a national championship, replacing a lot of starters, very similar to like what Ohio State's doing here.
Yep,
Even when they called Alabama in
yep.
2023, that was coming off of Bryce Young, and they transferred over to Jalen Milroe. That was Jalen Milroe's second ever start
Yep.
for Alabama. They didn't know what they were offensively there at that time, so they caught them in a decent time. Again, I think Ohio State is going to be a player in the championship race in the Big Ten and in the national championship picture going forward. I don't think this game ruins it for either one of these teams, whoever takes the L here. But man, I like Sark, Kyle Flood, the offensive line coach, Pete K, the DC for Texas, the coaching continuity there, what they are bringing back, the pieces that they've added at wide receiver and tight end. I just think that this Texas team gets it done. I think it's a war, and Texas wins this game somewhere in one possession game. I have another best bet in this game. I have two
Ooh,
best bets in this game.
okay.
I like under 48. I like under 48 in the game. I think both of these defenses are just too dang good. And I think that they will control the game too. Again, younger, two inexperienced quarterbacks. I don't think that they're going to want to put the game on the shoulders of each one of their quarterbacks. I do think they're going to let their defense play. They're going to run the football, try not to turn over, make catastrophic mistakes. So yeah, I've got this game. I've got like my score prediction is Texas 24, Ohio State 20, as we see here right now.
Continue to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Apple and Spotify. Share it with your friends, share it with your family. Everybody's getting back into college football season now. It's a fun time to listen to new podcasts, look out new shows, check them all out. Check us out on X, Instagram, and TikTok as well. We're always on there. I'm always posting out some good clips throughout the week and good graphs and all that. For Lance Barton, I'm Tyler Noe. Take care. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next time.